cold wind cut through Jason Carter, a 35-year-old man with a lean but athletic build, piercing hazel eyes and a chiseled jawline. His short black hair is neatly styled, and he has a well-groomed beard's thin jacket like a blade. His fingers, stiff from the winter chill, hovered over the keypad of his phone. His breath came out in quick, ragged clouds as he stared at the email notification glowing on the cracked screen. "Dear Mr. Carter, we regret to inform you." Jason didn't need to read the rest. He'd seen these words before, exactly 100 times. Job rejections, investor rejections, bank loan rejections. It was always the same. Not the right fit, not enough experience. We've decided to go in another direction. He shoved the phone into his pocket and tightened his fists. Across the street, the lights of a high-rise office building glowed like a beacon of wealth, illuminating men and women in tailored suits sipping on overpriced lattes. That was supposed to be his life. He had worked for it. A year ago, he was a rising tech star, leading a promising startup with an AI-driven business model. Investors had praised him, competitors had feared him, and friends had envied him. But it had all come crashing down in a single night. Jason clenched his teeth at the memory. His co-founder, his best friend Daniel, had gutted their company from the inside, forging documents, misappropriating funds, and leaving Jason to take the fall. By the time Jason uncovered the betrayal, it was too late. The investors had backed out, their funding was revoked, and the company collapsed. His bank account had been drained dry. His name was tarnished. No one wanted to do business with him. That was 9 months ago. Since then, he had slept in shelters, skipped meals, and scoured the city for any job that would take him. Nothing stuck. He had gone from boardrooms to begging for freelance gigs online just to afford a meal. And now, standing on this icy sidewalk with his last $20 stuffed in his pocket, Jason knew he had reached the bottom. A familiar voice echoed in his head, his father's years ago. A man is only as strong as his will to get back up. Jason exhaled sharply and turned toward the coffee shop behind him. He would make his own if no one would give him a job. Inside the cafe, the warmth hit Jason like a wave. The scent of fresh espresso filled the air, and the hum of conversation surrounded him. He found an empty table in the corner and pulled out his battered laptop, the last remnant of his past life. With a deep breath, he began typing. Jason had spent years in the tech industry. He knew its strengths, its weaknesses, and the gaps no one was paying attention to. He had an idea, a business model that could revolutionize customer engagement for online businesses. But ideas meant nothing without execution, and execution required money. He opened his email and started sending out cold pitches to potential investors. Again, email 101, email 102, email 103. He typed until his fingers ached, crafting pitch after pitch. He knew the odds. Most people wouldn't even read his messages. But all he needed was one. Just one person to say yes. Hours passed. His stomach growled, but he ignored it. The $20 in his pocket wasn't for food. It was his survival fund. By midnight, Jason had sent over 200 emails. His vision blurred from exhaustion, but he wasn't done. He refreshed his inbox. Nothing. Jason leaned back, rubbing his temples. He could hear the doubts creeping in. Maybe this was a waste of time. Maybe the world had already decided his fate. But then, a single notification popped up. Subject, let's talk. Jason read the email 3 times, barely believing it. The sender was Ryan Mercer, a venture capitalist he had admired from afar. The message was simple. Your idea is interesting. Can you meet tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Jason's pulse raced. This was it, his one shot. But he had a problem. He had no office, no suit, and barely enough money for a subway fare. If he showed up looking like he had just crawled out of shelter, Mercer would take one look and walk away. He needed to look the part. Jason ran his fingers through his unkempt hair and looked around the cafe. A young barista was wiping down tables nearby. Jason hesitated, then approached her. "Hey," he said, forcing a friendly smile. "I know this is a weird request, but do you know any place I could rent a suit for cheap?" The girl, a petite redhead with kind eyes, gave him a once-over. Maybe the thrift store down on 12th?" Jason nodded, already calculating how much he could afford to spend. "Thanks. I appreciate it." She hesitated, then said, "You got something big coming up?" He exhaled. "Hopefully. A job interview." "Kind of." The girl smiled. "Then good luck. And here." She handed him a coffee cup. "It's on the house." Jason blinked. A small act of kindness, but to him, it meant everything. The next morning, Jason walked into Mercer's office. The thrift store suit was a little loose, but it was clean. He had shaved in a public restroom. He stood tall, willing himself to ignore the insecurity clawing at his gut. Ryan Mercer sat behind a massive oak desk, flipping through Jason's proposal. The man didn't look up for a long time. Jason's heart pounded. Then Mercer finally spoke. "You got guts," he said. "Most guys wouldn't keep pushing after 100 rejections." Jason swallowed. "Most guys don't have another option." Mercer smirked. "Fair enough. Walk me through it." Jason launched into his pitch. He spoke with the energy of a man whose life depended on every word. Because it did. He explained how businesses were losing billions due to inefficient customer engagement. He outlined how his AI-driven platform could streamline communication, boost sales, and reduce churn rates. He showed the numbers, the projections, and the potential for massive scalability. Mercer listened, expression unreadable. When Jason finished, the silence was suffocating. Then Mercer leaned back and said, "I'll be honest, I don't usually bet on guys who've lost everything." Jason's stomach dropped. "But," Mercer continued, "I like underdogs." Jason's breath caught. Mercer slid a document across the table. "I'll put in $250,000 for a 20% stake. You have 6 months to prove this works." Jason's hands trembled as he picked up the paper. This wasn't just money. It was a second chance. He had been rejected 100 times. But the 101st had just changed his life. Jason Carter is a 35-year-old man with a lean but athletic build, piercing hazel eyes and a chiseled jawline. His short black hair is neatly styled, and he has a well-groomed beard. Had never held a check that large in his life. $250,000. It wasn't just money. It was a lifeline, a second chance. But as he walked out of Ryan Mercer's office, the weight of reality settled in. This money came with conditions. He had 6 months to prove himself, to build something real. Otherwise, he'd be just another failed entrepreneur, another statistic. The first few months were brutal. He worked out of a dingy co-working space, spending 18-hour days coding, hiring a skeleton crew of freelancers, and desperately pitching his service to small businesses. Every dollar had to be stretched to its limit. Nights were spent on a worn-out mattress in a roach-infested studio apartment. The walls were thin, and he could hear his neighbors arguing about unpaid rent. He could relate. His own bills were piling up. The venture capital money wasn't for personal expenses, and he had nothing left from his old life. He skipped meals, survived on instant ramen, and rationed his subway rides. The stress took its toll. His body ached, his vision blurred from endless screen time, and the loneliness became suffocating. No one believed in him. Friends from his past life had disappeared. Even his mother, who had always supported him, worried he was chasing a dream that would leave him homeless. But Jason pushed forward. He had no choice. Just as things started to gain traction, the world reminded him how unforgiving it could be. His startup Engage AI had secured its first major client, a mid-sized e-commerce company willing to pay $50,000 for a pilot program. This deal would give him leverage to attract more investors. Then, out of nowhere, a lawsuit arrived. Daniel, his former business partner, had resurfaced. He was claiming ownership of Engage AI, arguing that Jason had stolen proprietary technology from their failed startup. The lawsuit accused Jason of intellectual property theft and demanded $1 million in damages. Jason sat in his tiny apartment, staring at the legal documents. His heart pounded. He knew this was a lie, a desperate move by Daniel to sabotage him. But the legal system didn't care about truth. It cared about evidence, money, and who could afford the better lawyer. Jason couldn't. He didn't even have enough for a decent attorney. His entire focus had been on building his company, not fighting a legal war. But now, If he didn't fight back, his business would be dead before it had a chance to grow. Ryan Mercer, his investor, wasn't pleased. "Look, I took a risk on you, but this lawsuit makes things messy. If you can't resolve it quickly, I may have to pull my investment." Jason felt the walls closing in. He had fought so hard to get here, only for his past to try and rip it all away. With no other choice, Jason sought out an old college acquaintance, Maya Reynolds, a sharp but underappreciated lawyer trying to establish herself. She agreed to take his case on a contingency basis. If they won, she'd get a cut of his future earnings. The legal battle was hell. Jason was already barely scraping by, but now he had to attend court hearings, sift through mountains of paperwork, and deal with public perception. News outlets picked up the case, branding him as a disgraced entrepreneur caught in a legal dispute. Investors who had shown interest vanished overnight. Meanwhile, Daniel had the money to play dirty. False accusations spread. A former co-worker suddenly claimed Jason had manipulated financial records at their old company. Anonymous complaints were filed against Engage AI. Clients backed out, fearing they'd be caught in the scandal. Jason's bank account dwindled. His health suffered. Every morning, he woke up wondering if this would be the day his dream collapsed. Then came the final blow. One night, he returned to his apartment to find an eviction notice taped to his door. He was out of money. The legal fees had drained everything. With nowhere to go, he spent the night in a 24-hour diner, sipping on the cheapest coffee he could buy, trying to ignore the hunger gnawing at his stomach. He had gone from sleeping in a shelter to rebuilding his life, only to end up homeless again. The next day, he walked into court wearing the same thrift store suit from his investor meeting months ago. His hands trembled as he stood before the judge. Maya fought hard, but Daniel's legal team was relentless. The judge ruled that there was sufficient cause for the case to proceed to trial. That meant months, maybe years, of legal battles. Jason couldn't afford that. As he stepped outside the courthouse, his phone buzzed. It was Ryan Mercer. "I'm pulling out," Ryan said, his voice cold. "I can't back a company that's legally compromised. I'm sorry." The call ended. The weight of it all crashed onto Jason's shoulders. His only investor was gone. His company was hanging by a thread. And now, he had nowhere to go. Jason stood on the Brooklyn Bridge that night, looking out at the city that had chewed him up and spit him out. The wind was strong and the lights of Manhattan stretched before him like a mocking reminder of everything he had lost. He had nothing left. No money, no home, no business. Just a lawsuit, a destroyed reputation, and the cold truth that the system wasn't built for people like him to succeed. For the first time in his life, he felt truly broken. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it at first, but something told him to look. It was an email. The subject line made his breath itch. "I believe in you. Let's talk." The sender? An unknown investor. Someone who had been watching his fight. Someone who saw potential in him, even when the world didn't. Jason's fingers tightened around the phone. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe the 102nd opportunity would be the one that changed everything. Jason's hands trembled as he reread the email. He had been rejected 100 times. Why would this be any different? And yet, something in those simple words, "I believe in you. Let's talk," lit a spark in him. He replied immediately, setting up a meeting at a coffee shop in Midtown. He didn't expect much. But at this point, what did he have to lose? The next morning, he met the sender, Olivia Grant, a self-made millionaire who had built her fortune by investing in underdogs. She had been following his story and saw something in him that others had missed. "I don't invest in ideas," Olivia said, stirring her espresso. "I invest in people, and I see a fighter in you." Jason wanted to believe her, but all he had was a failed startup, a lawsuit, and an empty bank account. "What if I lose again?" he asked. "You already lost everything," Olivia said. "Now you have nothing left to fear. That makes you dangerous. And that's exactly what you need to win." She offered him $200,000 in funding. But there was a catch. She wouldn't just hand him the money. He had to prove himself first. She challenged him to turn $5,000 into $50,000 in 30 days. If he did, she'd back him fully. If he failed, The deal was off. Jason shook her hand. Challenge accepted. Jason needed a strategy. Fast. He spent hours researching ways to generate fast, scalable income. That's when he discovered a gap in the market. Businesses were struggling with customer engagement. AI-driven chatbots existed, but they were clunky, robotic, and impersonal. Jason realized that companies needed a system that combined AI with human-like interaction. He found a loophole. Instead of coding an entirely new AI, he could white-label an existing chatbot, optimize it with customized scripts, and sell it as a subscription service. With his last $5,000, he bought a licensing deal for an underutilized AI engine, hired a freelance developer to tweak it, and built a sleek website overnight. Then, he cold emailed 500 businesses, offering them a free 7-day trial. His pitch was simple: increase your sales by 30% or don't pay a dime. Within a week, 20 businesses signed up. By the end of the month, 12 converted into paying clients at $500 per month each. He had made $60,000 in 30 days. Jason met Olivia with the numbers. She smiled. Welcome to the big leagues. With Olivia's full backing, Jason expanded aggressively. He hired a small team, streamlined the AI's functionality, and rebranded the company as Echo AI. Clients poured in. Investors started noticing. The lawsuit with Daniel still loomed over him, but the momentum was shifting. At a networking event, Jason met a powerful hedge fund manager, Victor Langley, who saw the potential in Echo AI. I can take your company from 6 figures to 8, Langley said, but you have to trust me. Jason hesitated. Something about Langley felt off, but this was his shot at the big leagues. He shook Langley's hand. That decision would change everything. Jason had always trusted his gut, but this time, he ignored it. He needed Langley's resources, and the promise of scaling Echo AI to $1 billion valuation was too tempting to resist. At first, everything moved at lightning speed. Langley brought in a wave of high-profile clients, introduced Jason to Silicon Valley elites, and secured a $50 million investment round. Echo AI was now the fastest-growing AI company in the country. But Jason soon realized Langley wasn't just a businessman. He was a shark. The fine print in their agreement gave Langley's hedge fund a controlling interest in Echo AI. Jason was no longer majority owner of the company he built. Worse, Langley had quietly been pushing Echo AI toward high-risk, legally gray projects, putting them in the crosshairs of regulatory agencies. Then came the bombshell. A whistleblower report surfaced, accusing Echo AI of data breaches and AI manipulation. The SEC launched an investigation. Investors panicked. Stockholders demanded Jason step down. Langley sat across from him in the boardroom, a smirk on his face. This is business, Jason. You wouldn't be here without me. Jason clenched his fists. He had come too far to let someone like Langley destroy him. Jason spent the next 48 hours digging through contracts, financial records, and backdoor transactions. What he found was worse than he imagined. Langley had been using Echo AI as a front for illegal insider trading, manipulating stock prices based on AI predictions. If this got out, it wouldn't just ruin Echo AI. It would take Langley down, too. Jason called Olivia. She listened carefully, then gave him a single piece of advice. Expose him before he buries you. Jason took her words to heart. He compiled the evidence, then arranged a secret meeting with investigative journalist Rachel Carter, known for taking down corrupt executives. If this story broke, Langley would have no way out. Hours before the article was set to publish, Langley called him. You think you're clever? He sneered. You have no idea what kind of war you just started. Jason hung up. He had just declared war on one of the most powerful men in finance. The day the article went live, the media exploded. The SEC immediately opened a criminal investigation into Langley's hedge fund. Echo AI's stock dropped, but Jason had prepared. He called an emergency board meeting. Langley stormed in, furious. You just destroyed your own company. Langley spat. No, Jason said calmly. I saved it. He laid out his plan. With Langley gone, they could rebuild trust. He had already secured a new investor willing to fund Echo AI under one condition. Langley had to be ousted. The board voted. It was unanimous. Langley was out as security escorted him from the building. He turned back, his eyes filled with rage. This isn't over. Jason didn't flinch. He had won this battle. But he knew Langley wouldn't go down without a fight. With Langley gone, Echo AI was free. But the war wasn't over. Lawsuits, government scrutiny, and competitors looking to take advantage of their weaknesses loomed. As Jason sat in his office, staring at the city skyline, his phone rang. Olivia's voice was calm but urgent. "You've won the battle, Jason. Now get ready for the war." The moment Jason stepped back into the boardroom as the undisputed leader of Echo AI, he knew this wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. Langley's ousting sent shockwaves through the industry. The scandal that nearly destroyed Echo AI became a turning point. With new investors on board and a fresh strategic vision, Jason shifted the company's focus to ethical AI, an initiative that resonated with the public and regulators alike. The media, once eager to paint him as a reckless entrepreneur, now hailed him as the comeback king. Stock prices soared. Echo AI secured multi-million-dollar government contracts, and in under a year, its valuation crossed $500 million. Jason had won, but there was one final move left to make. On the outside, Jason was a billionaire and a tech visionary. But on the inside, he still carried the memories of every rejection, every betrayal. He needed closure. One by one, he arranged meetings with those who doubted him. The bank manager denied him his first loan. The employer fired him when he was drowning in debt. The investors laughed him out of boardrooms. Each meeting followed the same script. Jason would sit across from them, smile, and politely remind them of their words from years ago. Then, without arrogance, he would tell them how far he had come. Most squirmed. Some apologized. A few tried to take credit for his rise. But the real reckoning was yet to come. Langley was out of the picture, publicly disgraced, facing multiple lawsuits. But Jason knew men like him never truly disappeared. At a high-profile tech conference in New York, Jason walked onto the stage to a standing ovation. The audience was filled with industry giants, investors, and former rivals. He adjusted the microphone and then delivered the speech of his life. "For years, I was told no. Rejected over 100 times. I was called a failure, a fraud, a dreamer with no future. But every rejection, every betrayal, every setback, they weren't the end of my story. They were fuel." He paused, scanning the crowd. "In this world, success isn't given, it's taken. And I took mine." As the audience erupted in applause, Jason spotted a familiar face near the exit. Langley, standing in the shadows, watching. Their eyes met. For the first time, Langley looked uncertain. Jason smiled. The tables had turned. Years later, Jason sat in his penthouse overlooking the city that once tried to break him. A framed newspaper headline sat on his desk. From rejection to billionaire, the Jason Carter, a 35-year-old man with a lean but athletic build, piercing hazel eyes and a chiseled jawline. His short black hair is neatly styled, and he has a well-groomed beard. Story: a new challenge lay ahead, mentorship. Jason launched a foundation dedicated to funding underprivileged entrepreneurs. He wanted to be the person he wished he had when he started. Success wasn't just about wealth. It was about impact. Final thoughts: Jason's story is proof that rejection isn't failure. It's a test. The road to success is brutal, filled with betrayals, losses, and setbacks. But those who persist, who learn, who adapt, they rise. What's your biggest takeaway from this journey? Comment below, like, and subscribe for more stories of resilience and triumph.